Hi, I'm Rigger. This is You Alright, and it is the finale of Ice Queendom. But before we start, really quick, I need to talk to you about something important that you probably didn't get notified about. I released a video earlier today. It is not a RWBY video, and as such, you probably didn't get notified about it. So, if you're watching this video, please go check out that one. I've just spent 2 days editing it. Like, literally, I think I've spent 24 hours in the last 2 days just editing. It's like no video I've ever made before. It's stylistically different, it looks different, it's about the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet stuff, but even if you're not interested, go check it out because I promise you it's very different and I want to get your thoughts on it, and it might be what more videos look like in the future. So just want to shout that out. There's going to be a link to it right here, and there'll be a link in the description, and there'll be a link at the end. When the video finishes, the big end card will be that video, so please go check it out. But now we'll move on to the main event of this video, which is, of course, the finale of Ice Queendom. So what happened? Well, in general terms, we did the wrap-up. That's really what this episode was, and that's what I thought it would be, and that's pretty reasonable. I'm a fan of wrap-up episodes. But how did it go? Well, opening up, we got what felt like wrap-up music for the end of a show, but at the opening. So, opening the wrap-up with wrap-up music, I guess that fits. Basically, this entire scene is just an ode to things we like, and this whole episode is just full of references to at least the first 3 volumes. Ninjas of Love gets a shout out, even with blushes, how spicy. We get shout outs to the video game, which, is great. We get shout outs to Blake's expanded reading in general. We also get, actually a really nice note, which is both RWBY and Weiss writing to their family. And RWBY is writing to her dad, and Weiss is writing to Winter. But the most important part of that is Weiss writing to Winter, talking about accepting her role and not being a leader and not being ashamed of that. And it does make you flash back, because these are the letters that presumably Winter was talking about when we first meet her. When Weiss does her thing and gets a little defensive in the letters, like, RWBY saved me. Well, she didn't do that much. This is the leader she was so unimpressed with when she met her, the one she'd heard so much about. So little things like that are appreciated, and, RWBY writing a letter has been a wrap-up before, so it all fits. And it's a good way to reflect on the season you just had, because it's literally the characters doing that. Also, I need to shout out that in this whole scene, they put a lot of work into making the girls look really good. They put a lot of time into the art in especially this opening, and one other scene later. Mostly because you're getting a lot of individual shots with each of them without, too much of a crazy background or things moving. You have these great bits of art that are like, well, we're going to leave you on a good note. Now, there is some really weird, wonky animation in this episode too, but it feels like it's a tale of two halves sort of thing. Except it's not split in half, it's just 50% of the time the shots are amazing and the other 50% they're lacking. So it's almost like you wish they could meet in the middle, but that would sacrifice all the really good bits, and they might clean them up later. Because, you have amazing shots like this. Upside Down Yang is great. Almost as great as that kimono, which needs to be on the RT store very quickly, because that looks fantastic. But then you get wonky bits like Wonky-Eyed Blake here. But that's right before a really fantastic moment, which really seals off this whole sort of little series, because they are trying to do the thing where technically you could try and bridge it in between volumes 1 and 2, and it would still be in canon, it would sort of work. They did their best, at least, and a big part of this whole, little experiment was very, very much the Weiss and Blake show. And I really appreciated that. Weiss is obviously a favorite character of everyone, and Blake is, like, my favorite character of the team, and underappreciated and doesn't really get enough to do. So, putting those two, one of the sort of most beloved character-driven characters of the show, alongside one of the most underutilized of the show, and lifting them both up with what was their sort of very rough start, that really worked for me, so I really appreciated that on a story level. And that's what this whole thing is. They handshake, and they do the come to us if there's an issue thing a little bit early, it's supposed to be in volume 2, you missed it by a few episodes, but, same thing. But eventually we do have to leave the bedroom, so what is the rest of this episode about? Well, it's mostly references to things we already know, and wrapping things up as I said. So, next we go to Ozpin, and we get a Silver Eyes talk, which is just RWBY being oblivious, which they are running with. She just didn't question it, didn't notice, which, fine. I mean, it was in a dream and whatever, so I'm not really worried about it. They're definitely trying to work to keep things in canon, but they wanted to shout that out. I think on a narrative level, if you were to incorporate this into the volumes, like if you watched volume 1, then this, then 2, and just watched all of RWBY and like made it canon, I do think it takes away from the first time she used Silver Eyes in, you know, the biggest moment in RWBY. Like, that's such an emotional, powerful scene. I don't like that if you were to follow this as canon, it's given away early for something that is serious, but, you know, it doesn't have that shocking feel to it, that everything is changing feel, and then as soon as that happens, everything changes. But, you know, that's not what this is. This is made so much later. It's not technically a retcon, it's just like a maybe, so... You know, I'm not mad about it, but I do think, on a narrative level, I don't think it was necessary. But yeah, RWBY is oblivious and takes sort of the surface level meaning from all of Ozpin's words, not knowing about the eyes. And then we do the Blake interrogation, which is weird to do here. I know it's supposed to come after, like, Volume 1 into Volume 2, so we're putting all those things together. But they do it word for word. Ozpin even does the awkward sip before Faunus. So, I mean, I guess, but I don't know why we did that whole scene. I get it. Well, I don't know why we had to do it on one hand, but I do really appreciate we did it on the other, because what comes after it is really good. Because right after you had the come to us if there's an issue and talks about trust, the first thing that happens when Blake leaves is Weiss is the one who stayed behind and waits for her, and immediately when they're talking outside, you get the idea that Blake just immediately told her everything. Not that she had a reason not to, but it's her opening up, you know? She's not keeping it to herself. So I do appreciate that we immediately saw the change in these characters and how they interact with each other. I do really appreciate that. Still kinda wish I didn't sit through the whole scene again, but it's fine. What we do get, though, with Weiss and Blake is more gorgeous animation when they're walking and talking. Blake looks amazing here. And I'll tell you what, as much as Twitter especially, and I don't really talk about this much, or except for jokes, but Twitter's been going off about, you know, how much the Weiss and RWBY ship thing is in this, and I've gotta tell ya, like, I don't care, I'm not invested in the ship stuff at all. But honestly, Weiss and Blake do a really good job in this scene of convincing me that it'd be something cool to pursue more than anything RWBY and Weiss. And again, I'm not invested, and I'm purposely not using the ship names. I am in the RWBY community. I do know what they are, I just purposely don't use them. But yeah, their chemistry is fantastic. And it works towards more of what this show is doing, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But again, so we go to the cafe that we're going to meet at after their meeting with Ozpin. And while it's lesser, I do enjoy RWBY and Yang firing some barbs at each other, because it's sisterly, but it also does highlight, despite how over the top she is, that RWBY is really evolving, and, you know, the responsibilities of being a leader and the pressures of getting to know people. And, you know, we do know that those things were things she overcame, but here you get to see her do it, which is nice. Again, if only early RWBY had more time and budget, it would have been even more incredible, but, you know, it is what it is. But these little things like that are really nice, and they are cool to see. And then we get Sun dropping in, and there are a lot of people who would cringe at that, like, oh, why is Sun here just for the ending? But I actually really like what they did with him, because he comes in and they talk about, oh, you know, this and that, and then Weiss and Blake show up. And immediately they do the, oh, are you okay sitting with a Faunus thing, which is very on the nose, and yeah, they quickly move past it, which I don't think that was necessary, and if that was what he was here for, that would be very unnecessary to me in that way, because it was, yeah, anyway, it's uncomfortable. But moving past that, what they do with Sun immediately after is really show the team dynamic when they sit him down, because he knows pretty much everything, about Blake at least, because they're just coming off the Blake interview with Ozpin. And they talk about how, like, you know she was in the White Fang, you know what happened at the docks, you know all this, you can't say. And it's not Blake telling them that, it's Weiss saying that, and the rest of the team being like, we have to be in on this, we can't talk, and that goes for you too, Son. And he's totally cool with it. But it immediately shows that bonding thing of we have each other's back, we have everyone's back, we are going to follow up with everyone who needs to be followed up with to keep this secret, because as Blake says, she wants to start a new life here. Which is really nice, and something that I'm sure Sun can appreciate. And yeah, again, he's cool with it, takes no convincing at all, but just showing them bonding and becoming more of a team really was one of the major points of this show, because what it is doing is trying to wrap back to Volume 2. Because when you watch Volume 2, if you watch Volume 1 and Volume 2, there is a leap. Like, they're closer at the end of Volume 1, like, they've sorted out their, like, initial prep, but, you know, all the getting to know you stuff and the fauna stuff, blah, 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 blah. But then they're quite close at the start of 2, where we get to the best day ever stuff, which, you know, we will get to. But that's what they do here, is they fill that gap. And I do think it's pretty adequately filled. As far as a bonding thing that would bring them from Volume 1 to Volume 2, like, that feels pretty reasonable. That's about where they're at. And that's great. And then they have a weird button on the scene where they have Sun describe his friends that are coming as hotties, which is, I mean, sure, just a weird choice. Never say he isn't a good wingman, I guess, but just, alright, that's gonna be weird when it hits the dub, too. Okay. And then we move on to seeing Juniper, who aren't at the lunch. And I know that this is meant to be a happy scene. I'm meant to go, yeah, John's training and look how lovely it is, but because of circumstances, we all know what happens. So watching this with everyone being happy just made me sad, because all I could think about was, well, this is exactly those happy moments John is thinking about with such horrific pain when he's like training alone at night with the recording of Pyrrha in Volume 4. So, you know, it wasn't as joyful and nice as it's supposed to be, but we touch in with everyone. Ren and Nora get a thing. And then we move on to doing Best Day Ever. Now, I really thought they would try and not do as much as they did here. I'm disappointed they took out Ruby's completely, like, you know, world-breaking, fourth wall-breaking Nixon quote. They had to do the pose, but they changed the line. I don't know, I always liked how stupid that was, because, I mean, Ruby is allowed to be stupid. The show and the girl. Anyway, so they do quite... I thought they were just going to do like an homage to the scene, especially when they cut outside and you see Glinda and Ozpin walking up. But no, they give you quite a lot of the fight. And they even do what a lot of people on Twitter were suspecting they would do, which is might be the inspiration for what happened in Queendom, which is where Ruby surfs the tray, like the snowboard. You know, that might have been an idea for what they were looking at. And it does sort of help tie everything that just happened back into this scene, which is the start of Volume 2. Some of the animation's really nice, and we weirdly end off with the Salem and Ozpin back and forth, the no victory in strength and smaller soul. And I get it. I mean, it counts as a reference to, I guess, and we didn't get it at the start. I don't think we did anyway, but it did come off as odd. Also, I don't think the Salem voice is as effective as the dubbed one, or, well, the English one, I should say. I really didn't know who it was, and when I was reading the subtitles, I was like, who's reading this? This, is not intimidating. Why are they doing Salem speech? But, yeah, I mean, it's fine, and Ozpin's final words do resonate well to end off on. And that's pretty much the end. So we'll do final thoughts. This will be a little quicker video, but there is less to talk about for this one for sure, because it is a wrap-up episode. But my final thoughts, my wrap-up on Ice Queendom really is, I enjoyed it. There was definitely criticisms to throw. There was the one really wonky episode for animation. There is that people say they repeated too much with going in and out of the dream, which I didn't have a problem with. I kind of like them failing. I like that story more than just them being stuck in there or just succeeding. I wish it went a little darker. I wanted to see more blood and death, and I know that you might go, oh, yeah, don't make it dark. I kind of like that. I would have liked them to be confronted with dying in the dream in a more intense way. It would have added to some of the gravitas, but the animation that did go off went off very well. The story was very interesting, and I actually liked that. Well, when we started, when Ice Queendom was announced, I was kind of disappointed only because it seemed like a Weiss-centric story. And I have no problem with a Weiss-centric story, but we've done so much on Weiss. Weiss has gotten so much attention over RWBY, way more than any other RWBY girl, including RWBY herself. Weiss has gotten more story and development. And I didn't feel the need for more Weiss story. Weiss is great, but if we're going to expand a character, let's expand one of the others who doesn't get as much. And they really did that. It is the Weiss, utilization that helped elevate the other characters, because we did get RWBY's growth as a leader, and we did get, everything with Blake. That, this is the Blake show for me, and I am a huge fan of Blake, so I'm definitely in on that. The only one who didn't get as much was Yang, but that's fine, because she's gonna have some huge stuff to do in the coming seasons if you follow, in order, what things in her future. Yang's had a lot of development. The one that really hadn't was Blake, and this is her thing to be developed, so I'm perfectly fine with that. So, I mean, I'm not going to give it like a star rating, but I do highly recommend this series. Not that it matters if you're listening to the review of the last episode. You've either watched it or you haven't. You're either going to or you're not. I doubt you came here completely without watching any of it. And if you did, I don't think this would have convinced you to watch it. But just for me, I'm very satisfied. I think the writing was really cool. I liked a lot of the use of the dream ideas. I liked the utilization of characters. I really liked that, well, people tried to get on this show about some of the themes they picked, and they did them really well. That's refreshing. Like when everyone was criticizing the Blake Adam thing, but it turned out perfectly fine, and I thought it was really cool. I also missed in my recap them saying goodbye to Shion, and Shion talking about how their semblance used to be to see people's hearts, like how they felt in their heart. And there's a lot of talk about heart in this episode. I will cover it now because I realized I sort of forgot. RWBY talks a lot about wanting to know the human heart and how difficult that is and what a challenge that is, and was something they should try and do and understand each other. That's all a nice message. I will say, Shion, I think, was my least favorite part of this. The design's cool, the idea's alright, everything about their semblance and all that makes no sense, doesn't really fit the rules, and I'm not even gonna bother trying. I'm not mad about it or anything, I'm just whatever. And then at the end, they didn't really do anything. They're just there to facilitate the going into Weiss's dream. They need someone who can put them in Weiss's dream for this whole thing to work, so Shion didn't do anything. And that's fine, you can have a utility character, and that's why you make them look so interesting, right? This character's not going to do anything at all, so when they're on screen, at least they're interesting to look at. And I do appreciate that, and obviously they tried to do a lot with them being rep and all that, but I mean, they didn't do anything with it, they just mentioned it. Which is fine, but like, it seems sort of pointless. Shion as a character's only point is to just facilitate the dream thing. So, I wish they did more. I wish we got to, well, not that I wish they did more. I wish, like, if there was a fight in the real world just once, we could have seen them involved just to see, like, how are you a huntsman? What do you do? I don't know, that's my only downside. Which honestly, if my main takeaway from this series on the negative is just I didn't like one of the new characters who's only there to make the series work, then that's not a big problem. The only other issues are animation, one of which I think they are, trying to fix, like, after the fact. And also, I understand, like, no show's perfect, and I'm not giving it a pass, but for what it was, it's pretty great. And look, we are RWBY people. We're used to watching a show where a lot of the time the animation is lacking so that it can be there for other times, and where the story is really why we're here, and, the crazy twists and developments, and this had that. So overall, pretty positive, like very positive. I am very much down for them to get a season 2. And if they do, I want them to do it between seasons, volume 2 and 3. That's what I want to know. If they do another one of these, I want to skip forward in time, move through volume 2, and do it from when they talk about what are they going to do after they stop the invasion on the city, and what they do starting at the Vital Festival. That's a cool gap I want to fill in. I want to see them training together, I want to see them prepping for all the festival, I want to see them working with Juniper, because they're way better by the time the festival rolls around. So I reckon all that would be cool to see. I don't know how nightmares or dreams would get woven in again, but maybe it doesn't have to. Just put in something else that's new that still fits. Also, it would be a really good opportunity to redo the coffee fight. I know that everyone, on my Twitter at least, was really hoping to see coffee, but I figured they wouldn't. But if you do that gap between volume 2 and 3, you can do the fight in the city at the end, where, Team Coffee arrived to save the day. Redoing that with this type of animation, especially if that's your opening episode where you can splurge on it, because that's how animation works, you always splurge the first episode to get people in. Super down for that. Please, if you're gonna do another volume of this, do that, because we know RWBY, you can skip ahead. Start with the coffee fight, redo that, and then end the opening with them talking about what they do now with Roman and everything, and Ironwood's there in his ship, and the girls are talking about what do we do till the Vital Festival, I'm gonna sleep forever, all that. Oh wait, they say I'm gonna sleep forever. Yang says it, so there you go. That's my pitch. Yang says I'm gonna sleep forever at the end of that scene, so let's have Yang get a new nightmare if that's what we do. The nightmares show back up, and this time it's Yang's. Why not? And yeah, that would be cool. Anyway, that's all for now. I hope you've enjoyed this series, because I really have. and I hope you're excited for the future, because I am. So, until next time, my name is Rigger. Hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope I did alright. And please check out my Pokemon video. It's about to be linked right now. It's probably linked on the screen as I'm talking. Please check it out. Click, 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 click. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye.